If they're lucky enough to get into detox, and they do 3 to 10 days, and they get clean, and there doesn't happen to be a treatment bed available for them when they finish, they're discharged to a homeless shelter, often across the street if it's in the downtown east side. They're in the shelter with the same people they used with before they went to detox. What do you think the odds are they stay clean for more than a night? They're not very high. An awful lot of them go back to ground zero at that point. If they get lucky enough to go from detox to treatment, they might get 30 days, 60 days, 90 days in treatment, but if there's not clean, stable support housing ready for them at the end of treatment, they get discharged back to a homeless shelter with people they used with previously. Many relapse at that point. If they manage to get through treatment and get into safe housing, the safe housing is not secure. Much of it requires ongoing permanent abstinence, and if they relapse in any form, they're sent to the street again. So the experience an awful lot of people on the streets of Vancouver have with recovery through Vancouver Coastal Health is that they keep getting made homeless by the process. It feels to them defeating. It feels to them like some strange sort of game where they play the game a little while and then at some point end up homeless again. So what works? What's the solution? What about, instead of bringing the client to the treatment, we bring the treatment to the client? And that's the core idea of treatment at home. It has several advantages. If the client is dually diagnosed, meaning they have both mental illness and addiction problems, they can be dealt with living in their SRO, living at their housing. They are disqualified from many drug treatment centers because they have these mental illnesses, and they're disqualified from many mental health facilities because they have addiction. But by treating them at home, we can manage to deal with it. The results of treatment at home, by and large, are the same or better as the results from inpatient treatment. And depending on the model chosen, treatment at home can cost the same or less than inpatient treatment. But the most important part is whether the government fails and the health system fails the client, or the client messes up and relapses, it doesn't cause homelessness. They're still housed. So they have the freedom to have the same kind of progress and steps back that we have with any other kind of recovery from any other kind of disease. The third piece that works is community support. There's a saying in a lot of treatment places, it doesn't matter how you got here, it matters how you leave here. What they mean by that is the toughest part for most addicts, and I'm told for a lot of mentally ill as well, is to reintegrate with society at the end. You've been homeless, you've been through this personal struggle, and now you have to go out and be normal one day. Without community support, a lot fail. There are a lot of ways we can do a better job than we're doing. We haven't really had this conversation on a wide scale in Vancouver, but I hope you will tonight. There's a lot of ways we can bring supports to them. We can create supported employment. We can create ongoing counseling. We can create ways for them to hook into faith communities and recreation communities and just enter life in a way that feels normal and prepare the homeless people to come and live with us again. The other thing we need to do is prepare ourselves to live with them. And I think this is someplace we've completely forgotten. We need to be ready and be open. We need to volunteer and be ready to accept them. It's a fun picture.
NIMBYism. Ism.
Yeah.
Ism.
We need to fight NIMBYs, and we don't need to wait until the NIMBYs open up and expand. What would happen if a neighborhood decided to begin welcoming treatment and facilities into the neighborhood before the city's even ready to start planning?
We do in the downtown east side.
We do. There's a great course called the Mental Health First Aid course. You can read more about that at mentalhealthfirstaid.ca. If communities did nothing else, if individuals and families did nothing else but learn more about mental health issues, all of these behaviors become less scary because they're familiar. It's like having a cough or having an ache. You understand what it is, it doesn't scare you as much. And I think we need to learn to talk to Tories. I think one of the problems that's plagued this issue for the last several years is that it has been kind of owned and controlled by people on the left in Vancouver and has been made a pet issue. And We've made a lot of progress with our city hall. We now have a mayor who's committed to ending homelessness. I think we've made great progress in the province. We have made no progress with the Conservative government. I think that's because a lot of the activists are still kind of waiting for some magical change in Ottawa who will bring in a great housing minister. And as long as people are dying at the rate of 1 every 12 days, I'm starting to feel we need to find ways to communicate with the people who are there rather than waiting for just other people to arrive. So, as we get ready to go upstairs, I want to talk about a few specifics, things we can do, and some of which we are doing. So, we can do this. We can build supportive housing. This is the Lux. This is opening next week, by the way.
It's already open.
It's officially opening. Thank you, Garvin. It's officially opening next week, but you're right. There's already quite a few people.
The deluxe.
When we talk about supportive housing, what are we talking about? We're talking about an apartment that's roughly the size of a one-car garage. It has a full bath and kitchenette. It has on-site services, at the very least security and some outreach workers there on a regular basis. It costs us about $300,000 per suite to build, and it usually takes about 10 years by the time it's planned and put in the ground. Vancouver estimated its need a few years back at about 2,200 plus units. And in the last year, the province has funded 569 units, and I think they deserve applause for those 569 units. I would also notice there's still a ways to go. We can do this, too. Modular housing. This is like a horizontal SRO. It's like a motel. It still has security and food service. Because it is permitted on a temporary basis instead of a permanent basis, the permitting process can often be months instead of years. And because the permit is annual, the neighbors gain more control. If the place is a problem, they can resist it and insist it get moved at some point. Also, it's about $50,000 per suite instead of $300,000 per suite. And for a period of a few years, while we're trying to dig ourselves out of the hole we've created over the last decade, it might make sense to do more modular supportive housing. It also makes a lot of sense in parts of the province where land is far less expensive than Vancouver. We can do this, and I want to credit Judy Graves, who's in the room for this idea, as well as a lot of these others. We can open rooming houses across the province. There was a time when many, many people in Canada lived in rooming houses, which is a place where maybe there was a dinner on the table and you rented a room and you had a sort of put-together family. This is not supportive housing. It's not low-barrier housing. It's market housing. But it's a great way to reuse Vancouver specials and other large houses across the south side of the city. And if the south side of the city in particular were rezoned, or if not all the city, to allow rooming houses, we would probably have hundreds, if not thousands, of affordable SRO-type accommodations on the market in a short period of time. We can do this, not-for-profit housing. There is a huge gap, as most of you know, between an SRO room and a condo. There's a huge gap between $400 or $500 a month and $400,000 or $500,000 just to get in. We need to build housing that fills that gap. That can include not-for-profit family rental. That could include reinventing co-op housing. And it includes entry-level condo housing built by nonprofits, like the Options for Housing model in Options for Housing model in Toronto. On to treatment. We can do this. This is one of the most exciting things that's about to happen in Vancouver. So we know we need to treat people at home, but because we haven't been doing it, we don't know what our best practices are. We don't actually know how to treat people at home in ways that work really well. There is, however, a program coming to Vancouver. It's going to be announced in the next few months called At Home, or Chez Soi. It's a federal program happening in 5 cities, and it is an attempt to study what the best treatment at home will look like. In Vancouver, they're going to choose 300 homeless and mentally ill individuals and put 100 into a plan called Assertive Community Treatment, put 100 into a plan called Intensive Case Management, and 100 into a made-in-Vancouver on-site model at the Bosman Hotel.